it heavily affected my my perception of the world as a place. I was not really that interested in traveling, but I knew that other countries were full of people that were real, an experience that a lot of people, even as adults, don't really have. It also gave me the opinion about war that it's not like that it's a big deal because people go and die at war, and even the ones that live can be injured, or like even at that time when it wasn't really talked about, I understood that people could be mentally injured from war. So it's not, something that to take as, lightly or whatever, based on patriotism. And as I've said, like in my work or whatever, sometimes it did create an ambivalence about patriotism, and what does it mean in terms of like when you see patriotism rearing up, it's really like an emergency version of what like real patriotism probably is. And then it also affected like my feelings about racism and race and what does it mean and so on, because I didn't grow up in like Waco, where a lot of my family is from, is extremely segregated. And I lived there for a little while, so I got to kind of really experience it. But military towns tend to be like totally unsegregated because the military, it makes people of different races work together. And there's sure enough racist people in the military, but it's a different kind of racism. Like you might think whatever you think about people of another group, and you might say whatever you say about that, but you got to work with those people, and they got to work with you, and things got to get done, and you live and die by how y'all take care of one another. In their life, in your life, it goes together. So one of my friends growing up, his dad is a white kid. His dad would say things that were totally racist. You know what I mean? Because he just, if you're around white people that much, you're going to hear it. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, like even that, like my attitude about racism is just, the more aware you become of racism, like stuff makes you mad, but to me, it's like a part of the puzzle. It never was able to become my whole life, racism, because it's like you see how civilizations that are built that are not, homogenous civilizations, and the closer you get to any civilization, you'll see that none of them really are. You have to confront and deal with, racism or tribalism or whatever it is, unless you're just going to break everything down into very small groups of people that are all related to each other or something. I mean, you have to deal with it, and so when we're talking about racism, I really care more about structure than I do about anybody's individual attitudes, but that's a whole other thing. But that really comes from growing up in a military town in a very kind of pragmatic way, that the military and being around those people trains you to think and deal with everything.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you thought about it enough to have an opinion. And let's talk about the art part of that. Because
sure.
How do you think, is your art a reflection of all of that and your thoughts and what you want to say? And how did that develop? What do you think happened first?
Well, I think that, first of all, I think the most important thing to say, whatever kind of art that I'm making at any given time, all my art starts with comic books. It all starts from comic books. You know what I mean? Growing up reading comic books. And again, that's probably something that came directly from living in a military town too. Because although I was always interested in drawing, even before I could even read or anything, I became a huge nerd about comic books, mostly from a guy who was in the military who was leaving our neighborhood, giving a box of comic books to my mom for me, and saying, "Here, he can have these because I'm leaving and I'm not going to take them with me." And that started it for me. Now, obviously this was in the very late 70s, and probably the very late 70s. Yeah, no, it was in the 80s when that happened. And in a comic book in the 70s, almost every single person in the book is white. So those things kind of probably affected. So my art career started within a paradigm that protagonists are white. So I was creating art, even at a young age, but it was mostly not about me. You know what I'm saying? It was about this kind of entertainment world where everybody's white except for the pimps and, sidekicks sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, until I came in contact with art that challenged that in me, and so I think that there was definitely like kind of a shift where at some point where my art became more about me and what has it got to do with me and what do I have to say. And so the issues and stuff that we're talking about started to enter into my art when it became about me. If you're talking about art when I was a child and I was creating art, it was dinosaurs, it was, fire trucks, it was, policemen when policemen were still heroes when I was a little kid, and about superheroes, and superheroes were like white dudes or, a Mexican dude might wander in there or a black dude might wander in there, but they would be very kind of fetishized through like white eyes. So, you might have Apache Chief kind of superhero or El Dorado kind of superhero, from Super Friends, like these kind of, and even I think that the black superheroes that I might have made when I was a little kid may have been a little bit more authentic, but not really, not noticeably so probably until it was really confronted to me that there was a reason why I was making only art that was about this kind of whitewashed world, and that I did not have to. And so I mean, I think up until that point, I was just like playing with the forms of the art that I cared about, and not so much it being about me in any way, or even my experience or what I knew really. But then as I got a little bit older, maybe in my teens, as a teenager, because I made comics since probably about the third or fourth grade, and drawing and stuff even before that, but only like once I was like a teenager, and people would repeatedly ask me why, where are the black superheroes at? And I'm like, at first, like, there's no black superheroes. What are you talking about? Like that kind of answer, until, I got in high school and I had my, main superhero was a black character, because I had been confronted with that, and something really came and gave me more of an identity of my own. And that was hip hop. As a teenager, when I became when hip hop became a thing for me, it was like a religious experience. You know what I mean? Like I became a real person in my own eyes. I wasn't looking out all the time. I was looking at myself and I was saying, what do I believe in? What do I want to do? And then I think when right after when I was in high school, I think that was the first time I read Brother Man, which is a comic by, he lives in Atlanta now. I'm not going to say his name because I'll say it wrong, but it used to be Dave Sims. That was easy, but now he changed it.
His name is,
and I don't want to pronounce it wrong.
It's
and so
Dawood.
Yes,
Dawood.
and
his name is Dawood,
and I've said and I've said before, and he knows this, that I think he's the most influential black comic book artist ever. And a lot of people don't really know him outside of like the kind of black comics community, but in that community, Brother Man, the book that he and his brother did, is like a lightning bolt that's like like Jesus is a BC and AD. It's like that. Like people don't for us the comic book world, like I bet you, like if you do a history of like all the lives of all the black people making comics of my age group, that pretty consistently, not everybody, but pretty consistently, everybody was drawing superheroes and characters in this kind of whitewashed world that we grew up reading and loving. And then after that, after the first exposure for them, to Brother Man, it became like a challenge to you, because in Brother Man every single character was black. The bad guys, the good guys, every single extra, you know what I mean? Everybody. It's like a challenge to you, and everybody felt authentic. So it's not like, well, this character should be black and this character should not. That's kind of imposed on you. And I mean, it's not necessarily everybody went, full retarded in the way they think about it like me, but it definitely, because I'm just that way, like how I think about things and try and understand, and not everybody is, but it was like, it's one of those things that, it was very, 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 very influential. And people want to talk to me about the artists that influenced me as a comic book artist, and I would say even as an artist in general. I don't think I would have gotten to where I am without something like Brother Man happening to me. And so it is very, and he's very humble and everything, because I mean they didn't set out to be like more than just to do their thing, I'm sure.
Right.
But
right.
It was a very, very important in taking whatever I have to say may not have ever been said. Because I might have spent my whole life thinking that I have to tell the same story that's been told to me over and over.
All right, and I will second everything you just said about Brother Man and Dawood Anyawile. And if anyone who's listening to this doesn't believe us, they need to go back. A couple of weeks ago, we actually published an interview with Dawood. It was almost 2 hours because he has so much a story to tell, and that's the part where I see you relating it to that. There, before Dawood, before Brother Man, there was comics were one thing. After Dawood, comics are something else. And in terms of us artists and us people now knowing that we can tell our stories, and that could be a superhero story just as well as Batman and Superman and all this other stuff. And I think that's the power that he has brought into the comic world, into culture in general.
Right. Right now, comics is going through this thing, and it's like right behind movies, like of saying, well, diversity, it might be important. Let's put some black people in here. After years of telling us, this is, after years of telling us. And so, like, one of the things that's happening a lot, as they're like, we got a black Spider-Man and black Captain America and different characters, and that's great. People are, like, shrugging their shoulders like, yeah, and who this is, like, 20 years late. Like, where have you been? We've been over here, like, doing this. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we've been doing. And I'm sure that for Dawood and his brother, it's really funny to them. I'm sure. Because I mean, that book, that's like what is it, 2015? I mean, that was the early 90s, like 91, 92.
Yeah.
1990.
It's funny.
I mean, they had door knocker earrings, so it might have been even before that. You know what I mean? I remember I had this icon, this image in my mind of a spread with a bunch of people from Brother Man, and there was a girl with the door knockers on. So I'm like, yeah, so that's like Salt and Pepper. So really, they were working on it before that. So it's like, Marvel and DC now are, kind of getting on board with diversity, and I'm okay. I'm cool with that, But I mean, I always remind people, I'm like, yeah, this is not the first time, there's ever been a black superhero, or even like black Captain America. You know what I mean? Like it, people are. Anyway, that's a whole thing that we can talk about the whole. We can talk about the whole show. So I mean, I'm not in charge right here. You know what I mean? We can talk about whatever you want. But
okay.
But that kind of thing, I mean, it's a very interesting. It's interesting to deal with when people finally start to see something might be important that you've been talking about for a long time. Like the attitude that you have about it, you have to decide not to have an attitude about it if you're gonna not, or you can.